If I told you that Psalm 23 is not merely a spiritual text, but an ancient code for creating wealth and leaving a legacy that spans generations, would you believe me? Or would you consider it heretical? I assure you, these words conceal principles so powerful that when applied, they can transform your relationship with money, with life, and even with the fear of scarcity. What is at stake here is not religion, but mindset. And those who understand this will discover why so many repeat the psalm, yet so few truly harness its power. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I am not reciting a phrase to soothe the soul. I am revealing a mental law so potent that if you grasp it, you will realize that you are carrying pure gold in your mouth that you may never have used. Over decades of interviewing more than 500 millionaires, I have learned that all of them, without exception, possessed an unwavering inner conviction long before any external sign of prosperity appeared. They did not wait for life to be kind in order to believe. They decided firmly and with emotion that they would be prosperous and maintained this decision until the world had no choice but to comply. Here lies the detail that separates those who achieve from those who merely dream. This decision was not cold. It was loaded with emotion, felt in the body, repeated until it became dominant in the subconscious. The human mind is like a field. It germinates the seed that is planted repeatedly with faith and feeling. The problem is that most people plant fear and doubt, watering it daily with phrases like, money never lasts, life is hard, things are only getting worse. And then they are surprised to reap exactly that. Think carefully. How many times have you declared that something would succeed, but inside were already preparing for failure? How many times have you spoken of abundance, but acted as if expecting lack? This inconsistency destroys more dreams than any economic crisis. It is like trying to light a fire while simultaneously pouring water on it. It is impossible to create warmth this way. I recall an entrepreneur I interviewed early in my research, a man who had lost everything twice. He told me that in his worst moments, he continued waking every morning, dressing as if for an important meeting, and saying to himself in the mirror, "Today, opportunities will come to me." At first, he felt foolish, but after weeks of this mental discipline, improbable encounters began to arise, new ideas emerged, clients who had not contacted him for years returned. This is not magic. It is the mind reorganizing. It is your subconscious aligning reality with the conviction you steadfastly maintain. Modern neuroscience shows that emotional repetition creates new neural connections, strengthening patterns of thought until they become automatic. In other words, when you declare "I shall not want" with genuine emotion, you are literally training your brain to recognize opportunities rather than threats, abundance rather than scarcity. Take Elon Musk as an example. When he announced he would take humans to Mars, the world laughed. Experts said it was impossible, and he was accused of wasting money, equivalent in the United Kingdom to several billion pounds. Yet he possessed something few have, an unshakable conviction. He maintained this vision despite technical failures, explosions, and multi-million-pound losses. This persistence comes from practical faith, the same type of faith that Psalm 23 describes. He did not say, "If it works, we will go to Mars." He said, "We will go." Conviction came before proof. Here is something that may challenge you. The faith that generates prosperity is not the one you feel only when everything is well. It is the faith that survives Mondays with overdue bills, uncomfortable conversations with the bank manager, the worried look of your family. It is the faith that even with tears in your eyes insists, "I shall not want," not as a wish, but as a mental command, a law you commit to uphold. Therefore, for 21 days, I want you to perform an experiment. Every morning, before touching your phone, before opening the news, before any conversation, stand in front of a mirror, look into your own eyes, and say with firmness and emotion, "I shall not want." Repeat it until you feel the phrase descend from the intellect into the heart. Because when this truth settles, your posture changes, your decisions change, and the world perceives this change. You will notice something remarkable. Problems that once seemed insurmountable will begin to lose their power. Not because the world has become easier, but because you have stopped negotiating with scarcity. You will walk differently, speak differently, think differently. And when this happens, doors begin to open, where previously there were only walls. I am not saying that simply repeating words and waiting for miracles is enough. What I mean is that when you align your mind with a deep emotional certainty, your actions begin to match that certainty. You start making decisions like someone who knows they will prosper, not like someone who fears losing. And that is when life responds. This is the hidden key that so many overlook in Psalm 23. It is not merely ancient poetry. It is a manual for reprogramming your mind and putting faith to work as a creative force. Because when you truly believe that nothing will be lacking, the whole world conspires to prove that you are right. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. These words sound poetic, but in truth, they conceal a millennia-old strategy to keep the mind clear and, as a result, attract prosperity. I discovered, studying the greatest achievers in history, that before any external conquest, they first conquered something within themselves, inner tranquility. I'm not speaking of laziness or withdrawing from life, but a mental state in which clarity replaces anxiety and direction replaces haste. Most people do not realize how much they live in a state of urgency. They wake up late, rush to appointments, make impulsive decisions, answer messages as if the world will end in minutes, and by the end of the day, feel they have not advanced. Excessive noise, whether external or in the mind itself, creates a haze that obscures opportunities. But notice how the psalm describes the action. It does not say, "Push me to still waters." It says, "He leads me beside them gently." This means movement with calm, decision without despair, progress without rushing. I recall a moment in my own journey when I was pressured to close a multi-million-pound deal within 24 hours. Anyone would have felt the need to hurry, but I chose differently. I spent that night alone, with no meetings, no calls, only paper, pen, and silence. The next day, with a clear mind, I noticed a clause which, if not altered, could have destroyed years of work. Calm gave me the advantage. I closed the deal, but on my terms. Research from Harvard University shows that people who cultivate daily moments of pause and reflection make up to 30% more accurate decisions than those who live in reactive mode. This is because, in a state of calm, the brain accesses areas responsible for creative thinking and strategic problem-solving. In other words, the rest described in the psalm is not unproductivity. It is an investment in your capacity to think with clarity. Think of the great leaders and entrepreneurs you admire. Many of them appear to move at a different pace from the rest of the world. They do not rush to speak. They do not hasten to act. And even when everything around them seems to be on fire, they convey tranquility. This serenity is not a gift. It is discipline. They train the mind not to be swept away by collective panic. And this applies to anyone, not only magnates or politicians. Perhaps for you, green pastures means dedicating an hour a day to a project you love without distractions. Perhaps it means walking in the morning without looking at your phone, or eating lunch in silence while reflecting on your next decisions. And still waters may mean learning to wait for the right moment before acting, without falling into the trap of doing something just to appear productive. I have learned that when the mind is noisy, opportunities disguise themselves as problems, and problems seem larger than they really are. But when you find your green pasture and allow yourself to be led to your still waters, you begin to see what previously went unnoticed. It is in this space of clarity that innovative ideas, creative solutions, and life-changing decisions arise. And there is a powerful side effect. Inner peace is magnetic. People want to work with those who convey confidence. Companies trust more those who are not swept away by chaos. And opportunities tend to gravitate towards those who know how to wait for the right moment. This attitude changes how the world responds to you. Perhaps today you are surrounded by pressures, deadlines, demands. Perhaps pausing even for a moment feels like an impossible luxury. But what I want to tell you is that stopping will not delay your journey. It will accelerate it. Because the right decision made at the right time saves years of work on the wrong path. Therefore, I challenge you. For 7 days, each day find at least 10 minutes to silence everything. No notifications, no conversations, just you and your thoughts. At first, it may feel strange, even uncomfortable, but persist. In the silence, the waters calm, and in the reflection of those still waters, you begin to see the path you need to follow. In this state, you become not only more productive, but also more strategic. And when the fear of lack no longer controls you, you can move forward with courage, knowing that the source of your prosperity is inexhaustible. This is the rest that generates progress, the calm that produces results, and the space in which true abundance is built. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. These words do not describe a peaceful moment. They describe the passage through the most challenging terrain of life. The valley is not optional. It comes to everyone. It may arrive in the form of an unexpected financial crisis, a medical diagnosis that changes the course of your days, a painful loss, or the collapse of a dream you have nurtured for years. The valley is that phase where the light seems distant and everything around you tries to persuade you to stop. Throughout my life and research, I have noticed something that few understand. What separates those who pass through from those who remain is the decision to keep walking, even in fear. It is not the absence of fear, it's mastery over fear. Thomas Edison failed more than 1,000 times before he lit the first lamp. Henry Ford went bankrupt several times before transforming the industry. Walt Disney was rejected by dozens of banks before building his empire. They all walked through dark valleys, but the difference was that they did not let fear dictate the pace of their steps. Science confirms what experience has already shown. Studies from Stanford University reveal that persistence, more than intelligence or academic training, is the decisive factor for lasting success. And persistence is not continuing when it is easy. It is continuing when every part of you is urging you to give up. That is why the psalmist did not say, "If I walk through the valley," but "even though I walk through the valley." He acknowledges that darkness is part of the path and chooses not to fear. I remember a period when I invested years of work and resources into a project that suddenly began to crumble before my eyes. Suppliers withdrew, contracts were cancelled, creditors pressured. It was a long and cold valley. Every day, fear whispered that it was time to retreat. But I decided to keep my eyes on the other side, even without knowing exactly how I would get there. This decision to advance without guarantees attracted solutions that at first I could not have imagined. An unexpected investor, an unlikely partnership, new ideas that only arose because I was in motion. Fear is like a shadow. It appears large and frightening, but it exists only because there is light somewhere. And if you stop to stare at the shadow, you lose sight of the source of light. In the valley, it is easy to mistake shadow for death, which is why so many abandon the path prematurely. But shadow is not the end. It is only proof that something greater lies beyond your immediate field of vision. Often people call prudence what is in reality disguised fear. They do not make decisions, they do not invest in themselves, they do not risk an idea, and they justify with logic what is essentially paralysis. The problem is that life does not reward inertia. It responds to movement. Those who walk, even in fear, discover that the very act of advancing weakens terror. So, if today you are in your valley, ask yourself, what is stopping me, prudence or fear? What opportunities am I letting pass because I do not want to face uncertainty? And more importantly, what would the next step be if I decided not to stop? Perhaps it is sending that message you are avoiding, resuming a shelved project, requesting a difficult conversation, or accepting that it is time to try again. I will not lie. Walking through the valley requires courage, and courage is not a pleasant feeling. It is the willingness to act despite discomfort. But it is in the valley that vision strengthens, character deepens, and faith moves from theory to practice. Therefore, make today an internal and verbal declaration. Even in the valley, I keep moving forward. Say it until you believe it. Write it on a piece of paper and place it where you see it every day. Because this is the key that transforms fear into fuel, keeps the flame alive when the wind blows against it, and ensures that when you reach the other side, you bring not only achievements, but an inner strength that no one can take away. The valley is not your destination. It is only the path that proves you're moving towards something worthwhile. And when you understand this, you will realize that every step taken in shadow is, in fact, a step toward the light. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for many days. These words are not a poetic ending, they are a declaration of constancy. This is the final seal of a journey where prosperity is measured not merely by what is acquired, but by what endures and by the legacy one leaves behind. Throughout my life, I have realized that the most respected individuals were not necessarily those who accumulated the greatest wealth, but those whose influence and example remained alive long after their departure. This is legacy. True success is not a singular event, a peak of glory followed by oblivion. It is built day by day, grounded in principles that do not wear out with time. The kindness and mercy that follow me are not occasional visitors. They are constant companions. This means living intentionally, aligned with values that ensure every action, every decision, every step carries a positive impact that extends beyond immediate reach. I have learned that prosperity born solely from ego is quickly exhausted. When ambition is only to accumulate, there comes a point when nothing is sufficient. But when ambition becomes a mission, every achievement carries meaning, and every result multiplies through the people it touches. Consider figures like Mother Teresa, who did not measure her wealth in numbers, but by the lives she transformed. Or entrepreneurs who use their influence to create employment, fund research, and support initiatives that changed entire communities. This is the kind of prosperity the psalm describes. I recall an opportunity to sign a contract that could have multiplied my assets impressively, yet I discovered that doing so would require accepting clauses that would harm hundreds of families. Refusal was seen by many as naivety or weakness, but for me, it was the decision that preserved my integrity. Months later, other doors opened, doors that brought not only financial return, but also strengthened my reputation and the respect key people had for me. Money comes and goes, but trust, when preserved, attracts opportunities that money alone cannot buy. Recent studies from the University of Chicago show that companies and leaders with high positive reputations tend to sustain growth longer than those focused only on quick profits. This is because trust and integrity create networks of support and collaboration that survive crises. This is exactly what the Psalm speaks of. Having something that accompanies you all the days of your life, not just during times of abundance. For me, dwelling in the house of the Lord is not merely a physical place or a distant promise. It is a mental and spiritual state of alignment with eternal principles. It is living guided, not distracted, convinced, not anxious. It is having a peace that does not depend on market fluctuations, public opinion, or immediate circumstances. When you build your life on this foundation, kindness and mercy not only follow you, but overflow to those around you. And this is the beauty of this verse. It completes the cycle. You begin by affirming, "I shall not want," a mindset. You experience the strategic rest of green pastures and still waters, clarity and direction. You face the valley of the shadow with courage, resilience, and active faith. And you reach a point where you not only live in abundance, but become a source of abundance for others. Today, I tell you, the most powerful prosperity is the one that does not end with you. It is the one that continues, that resonates, that inspires. When your life becomes this type of influence, time ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally, because each passing day increases the reach of what you have built. And that is why, when I say that kindness and mercy will follow me, I'm not only speaking of what I receive, but of what I leave along the way. For in the end, the true value of wealth lies in the sum of the lives it improves. If there is a single key that ties together everything we have discussed today, it is this: true prosperity begins not in the pocket, but in the mind and heart. When you decide that you shall not want, you find rest to think clearly, traverse valleys with courage, and build a legacy that endures, then abundance ceases to be a distant goal and becomes your natural state of life. And now, if you wish to ascend another step on this journey and become at least 1% better than you are today, the next video appearing on your screen will be your next step in this evolution of wisdom. Thank you very much for walking with me this far. If this message made sense to you, consider supporting the channel with a valeu. And if you want to become part of our exclusive community with priority access to videos and content, simply subscribe right now. I will see you in the next video, and there together we will continue building this life-changing mindset. See you shortly.